Most people think financial collapse is loud, a crash, a headline, a single bad moment where everything breaks. That's not what's happening. What's happening is quieter, slower, and much harder to explain. On paper, the economy looks healthy. Markets near highs, unemployment low, inflation no longer screaming. And yet, millions of people feel like they're sinking. Not panicking, not failing spectacularly, just slowly losing ground. If you feel that tension, the sense that something doesn't add up, you're not imagining it. The numbers tell a story, just not the one in the headlines. Today we're going to talk about what the average American's finances actually look like right now. Not the fantasy version, not the averages distorted by outliers, the real middle. And more importantly, where you likely stand inside it. Because once you see the math clearly, the confusion starts to make sense. Let's start with a number that sounds boring, but explains almost everything. Liquid savings. Not retirement accounts, not home equity, not money that looks good on a spreadsheet but can't be touched. Cash, checking, savings. When researchers look at this across the country, the middle point, not the average, the median, sits shockingly low. Roughly a few $1,000s, meaning half of households have less than that available if something goes wrong. That's not poverty, that's fragility. It means one unexpected bill doesn't cause inconvenience, it causes a crisis. And before you assume this only applies to low-income households, it doesn't. A large share of people living paycheck to paycheck earn solid salaries. Engineers, managers, healthcare workers, people who did everything right. The problem isn't irresponsibility, it's arithmetic. Money comes in, it immediately gets claimed by rent or a mortgage, transportation, insurance, food that costs noticeably more than it used to. And by the time the month ends, there's nothing left to convert into safety. This is why the phrase paycheck to paycheck has become so common. Not because people are bad with money, but because there's no slack in the system anymore. Now let's zoom out. You've probably heard that inflation has cooled. That part is technically true. Prices are rising more slowly. But here's the part that gets skipped. Slower increases don't undo past damage. If prices jumped sharply over several years, and they did, the new baseline sticks. Groceries didn't come back down. Insurance didn't reset. Rent didn't rewind. The result is simple. Most households are paying significantly more to live than they were a few years ago, while income growth lagged behind. That gap is where stress lives. It's also where savings disappear. When economists measure how much of their income Americans are able to save, the number is uncomfortably low. Low not because people stopped caring about the future, but because the present got too expensive. Saving becomes a luxury when survival costs rise faster than wages. And that trade-off has consequences. Emergency funds vanish. Retirement planning gets delayed. Debt fills the gap. Let's talk about retirement, not as a dream, but as math. You'll often hear comforting averages, six-figure balances, healthy growth charts, but averages lie. They're pulled upward by people at the top. The median, the true middle, tells a colder story. For younger adults, retirement balances are often measured in the low thousands, not because they don't understand compound interest, but because there's nothing left to invest. As people age, the numbers improve, but not nearly enough to support decades without income. Even near retirement age, the typical balance falls far short of what would generate meaningful monthly income. Which means retirement, for many, isn't an event, it's a negotiation. Work longer, spend less, hope nothing goes wrong. Social support helps, but it was never designed to replace full income. This gap between expectation and reality is why people feel anxious even when markets are doing well. Because market performance doesn't pay rent. Now layer debt on top of this. Debt isn't evenly distributed, and it doesn't behave the same way across generations. Younger adults often carry education and vehicle debt before their earning power fully ramps up. Middle-aged households carry the heaviest load: mortgages, family obligations, lingering loans, while racing against time to prepare for retirement. Older households often still carry balances they expected to shed long ago. And then there's revolving debt. Credit cards. The most expensive money most people will ever use. When balances carry month to month, interest compounds quietly, draining future income to pay for the past. This isn't moral failure, it's design. High-interest credit thrives when people are stretched thin but still functioning. Not broke enough to default, not comfortable enough to escape. That's the trap. Now zoom out again. If you own assets, a home purchased before prices surged, investments that benefited from market growth, your net worth may look great. But if you rely primarily on wages, the experience is very different. This is the split economy. One side grows on paper. The other struggles in cash flow. They both exist at the same time. That's why headlines feel disconnected from lived experience, and it's why so many people feel like they're being told a story that doesn't match their life. So where does that leave you? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most benchmarks people compare themselves to are already signs of stress, not success. Being ahead of average often still means being underprepared. But here's the part that gets missed. Understanding the system isn't about despair. It's about clarity. Once you stop measuring yourself against distorted numbers, once you focus on margin instead of milestones, the path forward becomes visible. Margin is the difference between what comes in and what goes out. That gap, however small, is leverage. It's what becomes an emergency fund. It's what reduces dependence on high-interest debt. It's what slowly restores control. The system may not be designed for ease anymore, but confusion benefits it. Clarity benefits you. And the most dangerous lie isn't that everything is fine. It's that struggling means you failed. You didn't. You're navigating a landscape that changed, quietly, structurally, and without permission. The real question isn't whether the economy is strong, it's whether it's working for the people living inside it. And once you see that distinction clearly, you stop blaming yourself and start making decisions from reality instead of illusion.